So I heard it once that the only thing that'll actually kill a project is a lack of funding, and I still believe that to be pretty true. The Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act is just our current infrastructure funding bill. It's also known as the BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. What's important to remember is there will always be an infrastructure bill. This is just the current one. It's much larger than previous ones, but there will always be some iteration of it. It doesn't truly expire until November of 2026, so we have at least one more funding cycle on it. So it's not completely gone, and it'll never be entirely gone. There will always be some funding source for infrastructure. By the time we see a project, it's actually been in the works with that agency for years, sometimes a decade. You know, the agency needs to identify it as a project. They need to convince their governing board that it's a needed project, and they need to have a champion for it within the agency, and they need to duke it out for prioritization with a lot of other projects at that agency. So by the time all those pieces get into place, the agency identifies it as a worthy project that should move forward, and they usually give it some funding allocation to get it started. And that's typically when we come into a project. There's a lot of ways we can help our clients make their projects more competitive for future funding cycles. You know, one of the most important things an agency can do is to develop a planning study. You know, if the project is more than they can fund with their own annual sort of apportionments of funds, and they're going to need to go to an outside agency to request additional funds, putting a planning study together helps them to think through the scope of the project, the schedule of the project, how much they're going to need, what are the benefits of the project. So just thinking through those components is incredibly important to be able to sell the project to any other agency to get funding. I think it's really important for public agencies to have just sort of annual events to let their community know what they're up to. And at that time, they can show them exhibits, boards and things that they're thinking of, and just getting that community support is really important. I will say community support is asked for in every type of funding application, just about. You know, they want to know that the community supports it, it's not a controversial project, and this is something that it's a priority for the residents. Another thing that's really important, and I see it a lot, is people come to us with some capital improvement program. It's maybe one or two sentences in their improvement plan, ask us to help them find funding for it. And I think it's really important for agencies to take a deeper dive into their priority projects, even just a one-page information sheet about that project, but something that identifies its benefits, really clearly says this is where the project starts and this is where it stops. You know, have thought through some of the important foundational elements of what makes a project. You know, the scope, the schedule, and who's going to benefit from it. At Dewberry, we have lots of resources to help our agencies complete their funding plans. One important aspect of that is we have people that have previously worked at these funding agencies, FEMA, FHWA, state DOTs. You know, those staff members really understand how those agencies operate and what they're looking for. Another important piece of the puzzle is a lot of times to complete funding plans, grants are needed. And we have a great group of grant writers throughout the company that have lots of experience in different funding programs. Quite successfully, they've brought in billions of dollars in grant funding for our clients. So what's really important is, you know, we can help our clients complete their funding plans by leveraging these professionals and these skill sets.